Hey, dude.
Hey, bro. How you?
Good, mate. Welcome to 2026.
Crazy, man.
Crazy. Hey, everyone. Welcome to The Balancing Act. It's so good to have you with us again for a new year. Did you have a good Christmas?
Yeah, I think church went well. We were alone this Christmas. Like, in terms of all our family, it's the first time that it was more just Ash, myself, and the kids.
Yeah.
Which was strange. But I think that everything was a bit slow, so it was good in that sense.
Yeah.
How was yours?
Yeah, it was good. I had a good Christmas. New Year, we kind of felt a little bit of what you felt about Christmas and family in South Africa. Karen and I kind of felt the same thing coming into New Year.
Yeah.
Karen and I spent New Year's Eve on our own, which is like the first time ever because the kids were off here, there and everywhere. And we kind of got a bit of a taste of what is to come in a new season with kids, you know, moving off for uni and finishing school. We're in an interesting season in that regard, but it was good. It was great. We had a lot of fun together.
You're getting old.
I'm getting really old. Actually, the other day, it's funny, right? So I was in getting a haircut and not my usual guy. And he said, do we want to do anything with your grey? And I was like, that's where I'm at now. That's where I'm at. I am so old, dude. I turned 45 in a month and a bit.
How dare you ask that?
That's heavy. Hey, there was no tip. For that guy at all. I'm not giving him anything. Mate, funny. It's been like on a personal note, it's been a good beginning to the year.
Yeah.
But there's a lot going on in the world around us. Just obviously on a political standpoint, there's all sorts of kind of ups and downs and rumours and innuendos in the world. And we're kind of used to that in some respects, right? But then there's some stuff that's kind of gone down in the church globally in terms of a pretty catastrophic failing of another significant kind of leader of the kind of Christian church in the modern era.
I've been thinking about the podcast and sort of as we've been preparing ourselves for this, and it's the beginning of the year, man. Like, why are we starting the year in this kind of? It's hard. But yeah, like you're talking about Philip Yancey and his moral failing, 8 years of an affair with another married woman, 55 years married to his wife, who's Janet. That's her name. I found that out the other day. Now, to be honest with you, I haven't really read. I think I've read one of Philip Yancey's books. I haven't necessarily engaged with his material. But I know that he's a prolific author and a man of great standing within Christian communities.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like he sold over 15 million copies of his books, which is astronomical, right? Which means that there's this hugely influential position in which he is held within the church, and I'm talking about it on a macro level.
Absolutely,
right? So, and I think it's fair to say that would be the evangelical church, Protestant church, across the board. I mean, he's written a number of significant works. Again, like you, I have engaged with some of Philip Yancey's material, not miles and miles and miles of it, but. Even his own life story growing up in what he has described as kind of Christian fundamentalism and then kind of his own exploration of the grace of Jesus and the major shift that took place within inside of his heart and his mind. And that became the very bedrock of his ministry and of his writing for a very long period of time. I think the thing that it kind of shook me a little bit was Philip is in his 70s, right?
Yeah, and 76, I think.
Yeah, 76, something like that. And so this affair with this other lady who is also married kind of bloomed really in his later life, in his later ministry, and into his 60s. And I don't know why that's shocked me to the point, not because I don't think, urges and other bits and pieces that kind of continue on, later on into our life. That's not it. I think the thing that shook me a little bit was that a man of such maturity in faith, with so many years of wisdom, pastoral experience of dealing with whole manners of issues. And if he's, I'm sure in his own ministry context, like we have, we've dealt with, marriage breakdowns and infidelities of other people and having to manage that stuff and to pastorally care for people through that space. You see the damage, right?
Yeah.
And so for that to happen later on, of such a significant and influential standing member of the Christian church, man, that kind of did shake me a bit.
Yeah, and I think I looked at it from a slightly, not very similar, in the sense I was like, after 47 odd years of marriage, you begin an affair. 47 years, 46, 47 years of commitment to one woman, and all of a sudden this plays itself out, and who knows what led up to it. And realistically, I think I've come to the conclusion that I think we can sort of go, what sin is sin, and it's okay to call that space out. But in terms of judging the full picture of it, we don't know enough details or enough of the story, and so we only know what's been shared, really.
No, we do. But I think the Philip Yancey thing is a bit of a springboard, at least in my mind, to think about, what do we do when leaders fail us? It's hard enough. It is hard enough walking this gospel truth, right, in the world. There are so many pressures on so many different fronts, and this whole podcast is dedicated to exploring some of that stuff. But there are moments, I think, that when we see our leaders fail, when we see people who we look up to or have deep respect for, who we know have had significant ministries and impact into church and Christian formation in particular in that space. How do we manage this?
Yeah.
Like I don't want this to turn into a podcast just about the Philip Yancey thing, because I think you're right. I think that there's an element in which we can look at it from a macro perspective and say, absolutely, sin is sin, and he has disqualified himself for ministry, and he's recognized that. And to his credit, he has retired out of ministry to focus on his marriage. I read a response by his wife that honestly made me tear up.
Devastating.
Just to hear the pain of that woman, but also her own faithfulness to the commitment that she made to Philip before God in their marriage, and has asked for prayer as she works through a place of forgiveness. All of that, is heavy kind of going, but what do we do?
I guess my first response, and Nath, the reality is, unfortunately, sexual sin, you see the cycle play out among Christian leaders time and time and time again. I sort of subscribe to something called Christian News Now or something weird like that.
Sounds riveting. Sorry to those out there who are really heavily involved in Christian news. It's wonderful.
And every week there is something about some form of sexual sin that happens more locally. So it's not Philip Yancey big, but every week. Child abuse, whatever, and you can just name a whole host of people. And the questions that I begin to ask is, the first thing is, well, how do I deal with the material that he has written? How do I engage with that? What do I do with that? That's where I go first. There are people out there that will place Philip Yancey's writings in a place that says, some of the truths that he expounded for us transformed my life.
Yeah.
what he talks about in grace, what he talks about concerning Jesus, concerning prayer. He wrote a book in like 1978 called Disappointment with God. And like
real stuff.
Real things, man. And people have read these things and have gone, that was so impactful. And then this happens, and I wonder how many people will turn around and go, what do I do with that?
Yeah, it's such a good question. I as I said, I haven't engaged massively with Philip Yancey's material, but someone who I had engaged with was Ravi Zacharias. I'd engaged with his material quite a lot from an apologetic space. And his catastrophic failings were indeed catastrophic and multi-layered and really broke my heart in lots of ways. And so I have had that same kind of question. What do I do with this content in which I have consumed over a long period of time that has been really influential from an apologetic space? It was interesting that Dave Dean actually mentioned that on our last podcast of the year. And look, I don't know if I'm right, but this is the approach I've taken in that space, is to say, let's go a bit Augustinian and go, all truth is God's truth.
Do you know, when I was thinking about this very question, you've quoted that a few times in conversation with me, and I was going, this is what Nathan would say, I think. I think he would say, all good truth is God. And I think there's such value in that statement though, right? Like,
right.
So I was like,
all truth is God's truth. And so I think that as we engage in that material, we've got to see what God is saying in the midst of all of that, rather than actually looking at the person who has penned it necessarily. Now I know that is very difficult to separate that.
Absolutely.
Like even in my own tension points. But the stuff that was written is good content. It's good material, and I've continued to engage with it. Admittedly, it is a little stained.
Yes,
like it is stained within me, and I don't know how to shift from that. But I need to work hard at separating the individual from the content that is there. Now, does that mean that I rush out and go and buy more content in that regard? Probably not. No. To be fair, no. But even as I think about someone like Philip Yancey, who's written so much in terms of Christian formation and the real questions, the wrestle questions of life and faith and suffering and difficulty and the silence of God and all of those good things, that his voice is tainted, but God's voice isn't.
Yes.
And I think I want to still engage with that stuff as necessary, recognizing that God has continued to use broken, sinful, fallen people for his plans and his purposes and his means of grace. And I see that because, Nick, I have to look at myself in the mirror every morning. Yeah. And that's a hard thing.
Yeah.
And I haven't fallen in the way that, say, Philip Yancey has, but we're all fallen.
Yeah.
And we're all broken, and all of us are deserving of grace. And God had throughout, like as I read the scriptures, mate, if we didn't read the letters of Paul because of Paul's failures.
Yeah, that's true.
Right?
True. I was thinking about that.
Like, do we not read the letters of Peter because of Peter's failings?
Or the Psalms of David?
Or the Psalms of David? I mean, for goodness sake, David himself, probably the most famous scene of adultery.
Yeah.
Right? That is fundamentally shaped, but yet was still described as a man after God's own heart.
Yeah.
I think we need to hold in tension the person delivering the message and the message itself.
Yeah. Yeah. And like, just to clarify, because I know what you're saying, I just don't want there to be misconstrual about what you're saying, right? Like, it's not that Philip Yancey's words are inspired writings.
No, I'm not saying that Philip Yancey or any other leaders should be canonized in Scripture. I am not saying that. I promise you, I am not a heretic.
So that I fully agree with what you're saying, though, and that is God can and has used moments like Philip Yancey's book, Ravi Zacharias' books, the writings of people across the board, Jimmy Swaggart, like thinking back to Jimmy Swaggart, like, and people who have been monumental in bringing about transformation and God's transformation, not their transformation. And I want to touch on that a little bit later as well, but God's transformation in the lives of people. That was God's work. Yancey in that space was just his.
It was a vessel, right? He's a broken vessel.
Yeah, that's right. All he was.
Yeah,
that's all he was. And so that should never undermine the work that God has done in your life, despite the tool maybe now becoming a little bit more stained or a little bit more dirty because of actions or whatever. Like, and I don't mean tool in a very disrespectful sense, but God is a workman as I see it, right?
No, 100%. But I think this plays into something that I do think is a little bit ugly inside of the Christian church, both on a macro level and I actually see this happening even occasionally on a micro kind of community level.
Yeah.
Is that while on the one hand we see our leaders in our churches and they do have a calling, and that calling for the positions in which they hold, it does have characteristics and foundations of character and the likes, that the people who are moving into a place of the pulpit or eldership or deacons or pastoral ministry or bishops, depending on your own ecclesiological context and all the other bits and pieces, they are not infallible people.
No, they're
not.
Right?
Because here's the thing, and the Pope is still a man, and he's not infallible.
Yeah.
Like he is still a fallible human being in that space. And so no matter how we look at this, no one in our own humanness can ever reach our own moral standard in that space. And so the risk is we place a burden on our leaders that is an unfair burden, where we have higher expectations of them, and part of that is that we view them with a halo around them.
Yeah.
And then we are mortified when they trip, stumble, fall, and the likes.
Yeah.
And I think that's a problem. And I think from a macro level, we do see it in a celebrity type culture within evangelical churches right across the board. And I think it's really dangerous. And I think even on a micro level inside of churches, that we can't do the same thing to our pastors, our leaders, our worship leaders, so on and so forth either.
It doesn't mean that they're just allowed to fall, though, right?
No,
like,
not and not at all.
Thing, right? Like,
not at all.
So when we look at a Philip Yancey kind of figure, and now I'm really talking
on a more general basis.
Yeah, like I want to move away from that particularly. But when we look at this figure and we see a moral failing in this manner, rightly so, like, whether it's localized or on a grander scale, rightly so, the people have the right to go, that was hectic.
Yeah, and sin is sin, and that's not okay, and so, the like. No, absolutely.
And so we look at it and go, yeah, rightly so, you are disqualified from ministry. And the mess of what that actually plays out, I don't want to really get into the details of how that manages, but realistically, like, people have there's a balance or a tension in this, right? That they have the right not to place their leaders on a pedestal, but to say no.
But to still hold them to an account.
You need to have an outstanding, by and large, being above reproach kind of mentality.
No, absolutely.
Moral character, right?
And that's the tension that I'm trying to describe.
It's complicated.
It's a complicated space. I think that sometimes... And I think the problem is that sometimes we can have a view of that person that is so high and mighty that we actually don't hold them to an account.
Yeah.
Right? We kind of make excuses, and that's problematic as well.
Yeah.
But also at the same time is that when there's a failing, that somehow when it has rocked people's whole faith in Jesus,
Yes.
then that is a real problem, because I'm like, you've looked to the person rather than to Jesus himself. Your hope is not found in a pastor. It's not found in an author. It's not found in an apologist. It's not found in a worship leader. It's not found in anyone other than Jesus himself.
Yes.
And the risk is that we end up viewing our leaders as if they're the saviors, that they're the fount of knowledge, that they're the ones who have got it all together, where us as leaders are pointing, don't look at us, like Paul. Like, it's like, don't follow, like, don't look at me, look at Jesus, and then walk with me as I walk with Jesus. Like, it's this weird tension, I know, but sometimes I think we place people on a pedestal that we almost hail them as our savior and as our nourishment, and that's an ugly space to be.
Having gone through disappointment in a leadership level and having experienced pain in my own self, not moral failing like we're talking about, but just real hurt.
Yeah.
And how that does, and I don't. That could be just because I'm human and I'm trying to find my own balance in this. But that did create this disillusionment with church in some senses. Maybe not with God himself, but with church going, what is this place? Like, and the wrestle in that space. And so, like, for people, and I guess I'm saying it because you're right. We should never be placing our trust in men or women of any, like the fountain of our faith is found in Jesus and what he's done. You are 100% correct. And yet something in the humanness of me still like goes, man, that's a good guy. And like there's this relational, communal thing where it hurts when those kinds of things play themselves out.
Absolutely.
And how do we wrestle with that?
And there's no easy answer to that.
No, there's not.
And that's why I suppose in this that there's a need for dissection to be able to say, well, okay, when there is a failure, what do we do with the content? And then what do we do with the individual? And where are the warnings in that? And we need to be careful in that space. But when it does occur, and we're not immune to this, like even when we've been hurt in churches, we see the effects of people who you love and you trust who hurt you, and the impact that has on your heart, the impact that it has on your family's heart towards the community of faith. Mate, it's so real. Oh my gosh, it's real, and it's so painful. And there is this disillusionment that does creep in. I think what we then have to do in spiritual maturity is very different to what we then do, say, when a politician fails us as we live in the world. Right? We have to be careful that in our disillusionment and in our wrestle, that we don't allow bitterness and pain to take such root that it actually has a negative impact on our own walk with Jesus.
Yes.
And I know that from personal experience how hard that is. And that's why I say it's a wrestle. Because we have to fight in that space, because, you know, we shouldn't put our trust in men, absolutely. But you're right that there's an element in our own humanness where we do.
We begin to feel isolated, no one's around us, yada, yada, yada. And it's just, and I think it's the work of the devil in all of those things where it's like, I'm now going to begin to unravel this. And that's what you're saying. When our leaders fail us, what do? Well, we don't let go of Jesus. That's like, start there. Let's start there. You fight tooth and nail for Jesus. You bring people around you that you trust to let you hold on to Jesus while you heal, while you recover, while you see the restoration of all the goodness that God has within his church sort of come back into your life, you got to fight for that faith that you hold on to. Right?
And those people around us become so important because that's discipleship. Like when we think of pastoral care, when we think of discipleship from a macro level, what we're actually saying is we're pointing each other to Jesus.
Yep.
So that the Holy Spirit can bring healing, he can bring transformation, he embeds the teachings of Christ deeper into our lives. So even as we're grieving and even as we're working with that, as we have trusted people, we need to be brave enough, if we are those people who are walking alongside someone in that space, to actually not placate them necessarily, but to actually be continually pointing them to Jesus. And again, easier said than done. Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
But that's the role, because I think you're so right that when we are let down, we have to hold on to Jesus. Yeah. Like we've always done.
Yeah.
Right? Like it actually doesn't change.
Yeah.
Like it is the foundation. He is the foundation. He is the cornerstone in which this house is built. Right? And so we need to be pointing each other to that space. But what else do we do?
Well, I do want to. I think there is something around the pedestal thing that I wanted to bring up. I read in an article. It was just this statement where, in part, there's this idea, right? So Philip Yancey, again, just using the situation, sold 15 million books, wrote really well around really good topics, but he wasn't the only author writing those topics. Some other people just didn't get to his level of fame,
for sure,
right? And one guy just said, he said, first of all, he said you should be reading more broadly than just the most popular guy.
Absolutely.
Which I appreciate. But he made the comment and he said, you need to also understand that favor with men doesn't equate to favor with God. And so the idea, and again, this is just, it's not a Philip Yancey thing. It's more just the idea that just because there's 15 million books sold doesn't mean God's in it.
Sure.
And I think you touched on this idea that we have this celebrity culture within Christianity, that we're quick to place people on pedestals. We're quick to chase clicks. We're quick to chase likes. And you take that and you create a local little community, and all of a sudden the pastor is the one that has all the friends, or the one that, like, you chase this popularity. And I wonder if there is a discerning feature here that we need to be wary of, what has been dubbed the popularity gospel. In a social media world, right?
Well, I think that becomes this ugliness of social media in that regard. Right? It does give a platform. And it's easy to find people. The algorithm helps kind of find people that kind of think like we think, and we can attach ourselves to people and say what we like, and that's the challenge in that space. I'm not sure it's fully related, but I think there's something interesting to what you said around the favor of God in that space. And I guess that comes back down to this deeper sense in which the importance of all leaders, the importance of all people, but particularly the importance of leaders, to be pursuing deepening relationships with Jesus himself.
Yes.
Right? That we never graduate from the gospel.
Yes.
And what I mean by that is we never kind of advance beyond the grace of God, because that is what we need all the time. And so there is this place in which whether you're selling 15 million books, or whether you are the biggest YouTube sensation for Christian content, or whether you've never written a book, or whether you just, you preach 52 weeks a year, or whether you preach...
And you're the most beloved pastor of your little 50 church, 50 people
whatever
church,
it is.
whatever,
but even beyond that, right? Like, even if you're the greatest life group or small group, home group leader, or the greatest of the worship leaders inside of your context, there needs to be a humility, and that humility can only come with a deepening relationship with Jesus.
Yeah.
That there's got to be an investment into that space. And look, I'm wary to say that it's got to look in a particularly prescribed model,
No,
like where you
absolutely.
have to read the Bible at 5 a.m. and you've got to pray for, an hour and all of those content. But what I'm talking about is on a macro level, that there has to be an intentional investment of genuine prayer, of reading and learning and learning to discern what the Spirit is saying, a willingness to review ourselves and our hearts and our motivations and our intentions, to recognize our failings and to have people around us who do love us, who serve alongside us, who are prepared to hold us to an account in a gracious way, to help walk us through various seasons of life. And all of that takes a humility before the Lord that I think is really important.
Our discernment should not be in the amount of people who like this individual leader
Sure.
or person. That's not how we discern
No, that's not what we discern fruit.
where God is,
Yeah,
right?
for sure.
It starts in character. It starts in the bedrock of who we are. And when you said graduating the gospel, and I think it sort of resonates with me, because in part when I'm preaching or when I'm teaching, everything always comes back to the gospel. And people might get sick of hearing me come back to the gospel. But the truth of the matter is, you never graduate the gospel.
No, never.
That is the foundation and bedrock of what we're called to and
Absolutely.
where we're called to be. And I love that idea. And so as a leader, you're talking about this idea that, well, there's a humility in how we approach these things, regardless of the level of leadership that we're sort of holding. But as a person who looks up to leaders, I want to say that their discernment is not because other people like them. They need to discern through the Spirit, the fruit of the individual, and see their lives not by how liked or loved they are in terms of how popular they are, but rather what's God been doing in their life that they can see the fruit of, right?
Yeah, and that's the thing. And that's why community is so important. Because I think our communities need to see our own growth. And growth takes a long time, right? Like I've been here in terms of our community of faith now 11 years. And I am different to what I was when I got here. And I hope in better ways. Have I arrived? Not at all. There is way more growth in me, and will continue to grow. And clearly what I've seen in the Philip Yancey scenario is, man, that growth will continue right the way through our life, regardless of age.
And if we're not guarding that space, it comes like...
And that's the balancing act. That's the balancing act. And this isn't just for leaders. Like this is for all of us who follow Jesus. That in our space, if we aren't pursuing that deepening relationship with Jesus, if we're not investing into that space, if we're not open to the works of the Spirit who brings transformation, then man, just like that, we will find ourselves more into the world and less into the kingdom of God.
Absolutely.
And that's the risk. And so to bring it back, I think we're right to say that, hey, we need to hold on to Jesus and we need people around us when these moments happen. And, there's a bit of an earthquake. And we need to hold on to the foundations of Jesus. But I think off this, we need to be really mindful of prayer for those in leadership. And a prayer that is regular. That is, Lord, guard their hearts, guard their minds, guard their marriages, guard their families, keep them humble before you, and not in some kind of accusatory prayer, but a genuine desire to see the leaders over us and the leaders within us to know and to love Jesus, so that the gifts that God continues to manifest in their life will bless us, so that we can, as a whole community, live out the gospel in a more profound way into the community around us. So I think we need to be praying for our leaders in that space. And I think that was the thing that hit me when Philip Yancey's wife wrote that, where the humility of this woman to say, pray for me, pray for me so I can forgive out of this deep trauma. Pray that I would continue to hold on to the covenant that I promised before God in my marriage. Man, the humility in that, unbelievable.
Yeah.
So we need to be praying for our leaders. We do.
If it can happen to people like Philip Yancey, where you're like, not this guy, not him. It can happen to me. It can happen to any one of us who find ourselves in a leadership space. You think we're safe. You think you're safe. Never me. And we need to be surrounded by prayer. You need to surround your leaders with prayer. You need to be praying, because the enemy's deception and the roaring lion is looking for any opportunity to just devour us.
Yeah, he is. And that's why even with inside of leadership teams, there has to be trust.
Yeah.
There has to be love. There has to be grace. There has to be a willingness to be praying and uplifting one another.
Yeah.
Because if we don't, then we are isolated, and sheep who are isolated in a paddock when a wolf is by, it takes hold of you, right? And we need to be mindful of that. And so I think about that, for not just us as leaders, but leaders in our own community of faith, and just Christians in our own community, but also in all the churches across the board.
Oh, and I want to say, just to qualify the statement of leadership is not just up there, right? You lead your family as parents.
No, 100%.
There's a leadership that happens on every level that we need to just be praying into and trusting that God leads us all unto Jesus in those many ways.
That's a really good point, right? Because even in this context, I think it would probably be easy for people to go, oh, they're talking about senior leaders of churches and of ministries and of whatever the case may be. I think that's fair, that people would assume that, but I think you're right. And I think what you said is really valuable, that we're talking about leadership on every level.
On every level, man.
Right? On every level, both in the church and within our families. I think as we start 2026, there has to be a place in which we are reviewing our hearts and our minds and looking at those areas in which temptation can take root.
Yeah.
And we need to be setting ourselves up well for another really great year of honouring and serving and loving Jesus.
Knowing that we will fail.
Knowing that we're going to...
In many different ways, right?
In many different ways, for sure. We're not going to be perfect at any point along the way.
Yep.
But that doesn't mean that we don't do the hard work.
Yeah. And
it doesn't mean that we don't fight for relationships with others to help us to navigate these spaces. Because we're going to need it. And clearly for us who vocationally work in the church, but even for the vast majority of our people who are trying to navigate living and working in a world where there is one particular message that runs at odds to the gospel message that we hear on a Sunday, and we need to be protecting our minds and our hearts, and we need to be investing deeply into Jesus and encouraging each other to hold on to Jesus, so that whatever the spiritual earthquake comes, and no matter how big it is, we can say the Lord is good.
One of the things I realized sort of in conjunction with this is that, guys, again, not an author that I particularly engage with, but John Piper celebrated his 80th birthday the beginning of this year, right? And I want to say that there are leaders out there that we can still trust.
Yeah.
That we can. He's written prolifically also. Yeah. He's phenomenal in the stuff that he's offered the Christian community.
Yeah.
There are still good men and women of God out there that are on pedestals, unfortunately, for sure, but also
who are faithful.
Yeah. And they're within your local community.
Yeah, they are.
So we should be cautious not starting to paint all sorts of leadership in the space with the same kind of brush.
Yeah, and that's the risk.
Yeah.
Right, that's the risk, that we jump to knee-jerk reactions. And I think that's why we wanted to have this conversation.
Yeah.
let's acknowledge the difficulty, but let's work our way through this.
Yes, absolutely.
Because I think it's important as we head to the year. Hey, mate, looking forward to this year with you.
It's going to be great.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. We've got some great stuff kind of in the pipelines for the Balancing Act. We're looking forward to having a number of really incredible guests on with us to talk about a whole myriad of different topics on how we navigate the space of living in the world and not being of the world. So please make sure you're on the lookout for new episodes as they drop. But it would be really good we would love it, and it would really be helpful for us if you find this stuff really beneficial, at least actually not even really beneficial. If you find it just even slightly entertaining and helpful, even a smidge, can we ask you to share it? That'd be good.
Even if
not sure that we can be on a pedestal, by the way.
Even if it's just us tripping each other and we don't say anything theologically meaningful.
Yeah.
No, it's so good. Yeah.
It's good, mate. Looking forward to more of these to come. So thanks, everyone. Thanks for joining us.
Cheers, guys.